my loves, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new. Hi, hello. My name is Loey, and I am back in Los Angeles for a little bit. I don't even know if this is the first video that you're seeing when I'm here, but this is the first video that I'm filming when I'm here. If you guys hear like noises, especially like chewing sounds, or I don't know, just general sounds, don't be too terribly freaked out. I know we're gonna talk about some scary stuff today. I am watching my neighbor's dog, which I have been doing kind of on and off since all of my animals left LA, which you would know if I ever uploaded any freaking vlogs that I take in life, you know what I mean? So if you hear anything, that's what that sound is. That's also what that little pop-up like doggy gate thing is. I've had that forever. It just worked out really well for this situation. So anyways, if you hear anything like that, sorry. But a lot of you guys really enjoyed my last video where I sort of like read a subscriber story, but I did it a little bit differently. I like told a subscriber story to you guys. And a lot of you were like, this is really fun. It's kind of a nice change from when you just read stories from your phone. So I thought that today I would read another subscriber story and tell you about this girl that I'm gonna name Teresa. She did ask that I would change her name because obviously she wants to kind of not be totally outed on the internet, especially since this isn't really Teresa's story, it's more of her son's story. I thought that was just sort of interesting because the last story of a subscriber's that I told was literally a story about my subscriber whose son was like being followed by something. And this story is a little bit different. It's about her son and her son's twin that was never born. It's definitely a spooky story, but it's not super dark or anything like that. So I thought it was a pretty good one to tell today. If you guys have not already, make sure to go ahead and give me a like on this video if you enjoy these videos, just because I want to know how you guys feel about this versus like other methods of storytelling that I do. I don't know, I just like to know what you guys like. But yeah, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. We would love to have you as part of the family, and if you've done both of those things, do me one last favor and hit that notification bell so that you are always notified whenever I upload a new video. Sorry for the spiel, kind of have to in YouTube's current changing times. But anyways, let's get right into this story. It's so much more calming, and it's so much more like, I can breathe hearing sounds and knowing like there's another being in the apartment with me and I don't have to be petrified. Teresa basically said she kind of wanted to be a voice for her son, since of course he doesn't really know how to like tell me these things. He's a very young child. She just wanted to kind of share his story and talk about his experiences. She said pretty much from like the minute that she really was starting to get to know his personality, like 7 months or so, that she was realizing this was like a spitfire of a kid. I mean, he was just a fireball, like always getting into stuff, so curious, so smart. And she just was realizing more and more as she kind of like got to know his personality that he was just gonna be a handful. As he kind of started trying to speak, as that became more of a thing that he was learning, she found that he would always just babble to nothing and no one. And I mean, kids just talk a lot once they kind of learn to talk, but it would be like when she would talk to him, you know how like kids will babble back to you, like they'll literally respond to what you're saying. She felt like it was kind of like that, like sort of eerie, sort of unexplainable, like, is he talking to someone? But Teresa has a pretty open mind. She's very open to the spiritual world, and she just assumed he was literally communicating with spirits. Like from the moment that she started noticing this, she didn't really take too much alarm to it, you know what I mean? Like she wasn't like, oh, this is creepy, this is weird, like I don't know. She was more so just like, well, this is what's happening, and you know, she didn't panic too much. She didn't really worry too much about her son or the things that he would do until he kind of started walking, which I'm sure he was even more of a handful at that point. She would notice he would always kind of crawl over to this huge mirror that they have in their house, and this is where he would kind of like start to try to pull himself up and stand and, you know, take steps and stuff like that. But he would do this and do this and do this, and she was noticing it was always the mirror, and she didn't really know why. But one day they're kind of going through this song and dance of him literally crawling across the floor, like, you know, trying to walk essentially. He actually fully pulled himself up once he got over there, and she was just so excited in that moment, the way that any mother would be, just so proud of her son. She was so excited for him. But she noticed really quickly he kind of started to wobble, which is pretty normal, of course, and he starts to fall backwards. But instead of like falling on his butt, he literally points at the mirror. And it gives me chills to think about this. She said this wasn't like baby talk anymore. This wasn't like babbling or whatever. This was as plainly as an adult would say. He points at the mirror and says, "No, you stop it." And she's just kind of looking at him like, and he continues to stand there staring into the mirror at something. And that's when she notices he's not looking at himself in the mirror, and he's not looking at her in the mirror. He's looking at something that she can't see and staring directly at it. As he was standing there, every time he would kind of start to wobble backwards like he was gonna fall again, he would shake his finger at whatever it was that was in the mirror, like basically standing next to him that she couldn't see. And she thought this was strange, but just sort of brushed it off. Fast forward a bit, and he's growing up like a normal child. He's obviously developing, and as he speaks to her and her family and everyone around him, he will speak clear as day, just perfect English, perfect words. But then when he's playing by himself, he'll almost revert back to baby talking, or what her family calls a jiba jiba. You know what I mean? Like, he's basically, when he talks to himself or he's talking to something, he's like babbling again instead of talking really clearly the way that he does with her and her family. He began suffering from night terrors, and she would do what she could to calm him, but sometimes she would come into the room, or she would be there trying to calm him, and he would sort of calm himself, and he would just be there laying still, smiling at nothing, if that makes any sense. And she thought, again, like a little bit odd, but probably just normal toddler behavior. So by the time he was around like 2 or 3, her whole family is used to him just kind of acting a little bit strangely, just doing things that aren't really the norm. At this point, Teresa meets a man in her life, and they are set to be married, which is such an exciting change in her life. And so her son and her were going to be moving in with him. And basically her son was super excited about the move. I mean, just so thrilled to be in a place with his own room, in a neighborhood with kids his age. He was literally ecstatic. One afternoon, Teresa has off from work, so she decides that she's going to take her son, which at this point we should probably give a name, so I'm gonna name him Alex. Teresa decides to take her son Alex to a park that's a little bit further away than she would normally travel to. She packs him a lunch bag, some toys, and they're on their way. They have an amazing day at the park. It's super fun, but surely the sun starts to go down, and she kind of calls him over to where she's sitting, and when he approaches her, she realizes he looks really kind of upset and down, and immediately she just goes straight into like protective mama bear mode, and she's like, what happened? Did like these kids like, you know, bully my son? Like, she's trying to figure out why he's upset, and she asks him like, sweetie, what's wrong? I have for the life of me been trying to think of a second A name, and I just like can't. That's not one of these 2 boys' names. I don't know why. But basically he comes up to her son Alex, and he says, Mama, who is A? And that isn't the name that was given to me. He says a very specific name that has a specific meaning to her, but she doesn't catch it straight away. And she's like, what do you mean, who's A? He looks so sad that she kind of takes a minute, and she's trying to figure out who is A, who is A, who is A, this name that has a meaning to her. But she's trying to figure out who is this that he's thinking of, and she says like, our cousin A, or like your baby cousin A, like who are you thinking of? And he kind of like shakes his head, and he's like, no, that's not it. And she's just getting really worried, like, was somebody like picking on her kid? She was trying to figure out who he was asking about, and he's just so upset, and she's trying to comfort him, and she's like, sweetie, who did you meet named A? Like, what's wrong? And he says to her, mommy, why didn't you tell me I had a brother named A? And it sends chills all the way up and down my body, because in that moment Teresa was like, oh my God, because there was something she had never told Alex before. She didn't even know what to say to him in that moment. She just basically picked him up and carried him to the car like a zombie because she couldn't understand how her son knew something she had never told him. So to backtrack a bit, Teresa knew when she got pregnant with Alex. Like, she knew. She and Alex's father had taken so many pregnancy tests and they all came back negative, and she was just so confused because she knew she was pregnant. A few weeks after all of these tests came back negative, she started to kind of show signs of miscarrying, and she just was devastated in that moment because she knew something wasn't right. And so she went to a doctor who then referred her to a specialist so she could get an ultrasound done, because he kind of thought instead of a miscarriage, it was probably something more like ovarian cysts or, you know, something else. So when she goes in for the ultrasound, she's like a train wreck. She's so nervous, so anxious. So basically at this appointment, instead of doing the ultrasound, the doctor just does like a pelvic exam on her. And this is where it breaks my whole heart, because our miscarriage story is so similar to mine in the fact that the doctor just very cruelly said you had a miscarriage, like just as like cold as could be, and then was like, don't get pregnant for a few months, was like lectured basically. Like she had done something wrong and she was devastated. The doctor was like, don't get pregnant for a few months, here's how to take care of yourself, like this and this and this. She was so heartbroken. But then 3 weeks after this date, when if she had just gotten an ultrasound, things would have been different. She went back to the doctor. She basically felt like she had the flu. And upon going to the doctor, she's answering all of the basic questions, like, are you on birth control? And she said no. And, you know, she's going through all of the motions. And they were basically like, before we give you any medication, take a pregnancy test, because we always just have to be sure. And she was like, well, I'm not pregnant, but she took one anyways. After a few minutes, she was called into a room where a very excited and friendly nurse let her know that she was in fact going to be a mother, and she knew it, and she was so thrilled in that moment and so excited to be having this baby that she had been told that she miscarried. She didn't really understand how this was possible because she had shown signs of a miscarriage and she had never been shown the baby, so she didn't know if this was a new baby or what was going on. Basically, the nurse there made her an appointment with her regular doctor. The doctor, who had originally been very cold about her miscarriage and whatnot, she comes in immediately to be lectured and told like you weren't supposed to get pregnant, like all this kind of stuff. Like, again, like it's, I hate mean doctors. But basically during this appointment, he does the ultrasound, and that's when it hits everybody that this was still the first pregnancy, but there was an empty sac along with her son, Alex. So basically Alex had a twin that was gone and that had been miscarried, but Alex was still in the womb. And so, you know, she had given him a name, which was A, the name that I will, you know, obviously not include in this video, but it was A. That same name that Alex came up to her on the playground and was like, why didn't you tell me I had a brother named A? That was the name. So this immediately just had her like in chills 24/7, because she was like, oh my God, like my son could not know about his twin that I've never told him about, because at that age, how can you understand? You know what I mean? How can you tell like your child that and like explain it in a way that's not going to break their heart or, you know, upset them and whatever. So he didn't know, and he had no way of knowing. His family wouldn't have told him this. Like no friends knew this, you know what I mean? But he just knew about his brother named A. So fast forward a few weeks after the incident at the park, everything's going normally, and he has a night terror basically. And she walks into the room and she's like, hey buddy, like, can I help you go back to sleep? And he comes over to her and he kind of lays his head in her lap and he says, no mommy, A helps me go back to sleep when I'm asleep. He helps me not be afraid. And that's when she, oh, it gives me chills. That's when she realized who he had been talking to all along. She tries to think of a logical explanation for this in the moment, and she's like, okay, this doesn't make any sense. Like, how would he know? And she kind of asks him like, sweetie, what does A look like? And Alex tells her, mommy, he looks just like me. And he tells her, he's just a little taller than me and his hair is a different color, but mommy, you should know what he looks like. He's my brother. And she is just stunned. She is also heartbroken in that moment, you know what I mean? Thinking of her baby's brother that he never got to meet in person. And oh, it kind of like gets me teared up just thinking about it. She kisses him goodnight and she goes and sits in the living room and she just cries and she thinks about her sweet baby A that had never made it to this world, and she just knows in her heart that it's the truth, that Alex is telling her the truth. You know what I mean? Like, he's not making this up. This isn't a story. This is real, and he really knew about his twin brother. She thinks now that he was talking to his brother in the mirror, you know what I mean? That he would fall and, you know, blame his brother pushing him or something like that, you know what I mean? Like, he would say to his brother, no, you stop it. And he would talk to someone in the mirror standing right next to him. And that's because his brother was supposed to be beside him going through life. And he wasn't there physically, but he was obviously there spiritually, and he was there with their family. And I think it's just the most beautiful, beautiful story. So now Alex is a happy, healthy 11-year-old boy, and he started to slowly grow out of his night terrors, but his brother A still visits him in the dream world all of the time. And now Teresa is pregnant with her baby called C, that's what we'll say. And it's a boy, and she's so excited to be having another son. And she is just, I mean, she's just thrilled. And basically Alex told her that A knows about the baby and that A wants to know what baby C will look like who he'll look more like, basically. If he'll look like Alex or if he'll look like A. Teresa thinks it will look like a perfect mix between the two, and she is just so excited for what's to come. But I just thought this was the most beautiful story. Deep down, she really hopes that she'll be able to see her son A one day, that is always with her son Alex. But you know, she's just grateful that Alex is able to experience his brother even though he never was in the real world. What do you guys think of this story? I thought this was such like a nice, happy story to tell you all. Still a little bit spooky and whatnot, and still sent chills up and down my spine at so many points, but such a beautiful, such an amazing story, and I really hope you all enjoyed it. So if you did, don't forget to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I love you guys, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.